This week on Jerusalem Dateline, prophecy fulfilled as more North American Jews return to Israel. And we'll take a look at what it's like for them when they arrive. Plus, British Labour Party leader rebuked for laying a wreath at Palestinian terrorists' graves in Tunisia. All this and more this week on Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Julie Stahl, filling in for Chris Mitchell. One of the most visible fulfillments of prophecy in our day is the return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel. It's mentioned some 70 times in the Bible. Recently, we brought you the story of the French Jews who left the growing anti-Semitism in France and made Aliyah to Israel. This week, more immigrants arrived in Tel Aviv, this time from the U.S. and Canada. They had different reasons for coming, but as John Woggy explains in the words of one Israeli leader, they're all stepping into Jewish history.
More than 200 new immigrants have arrived on this flight from New York, and nearly a quarter of them are lone soldiers, young people who came without their families and will soon join the Israeli military. Yaakov Khan from Monsey, New York is just out of high school. He'll be stationed in the south, near Gaza.
I'm not scared. There's no reason to be scared. It's our land. We don't have a choice, you know? You gotta do what you have to do.
And what does his family in New York think?
They're very proud of me. I hope that they follow in my steps, you know, and do what I do.
Mazal Tov, I don't know whether you know it or not, but you just entered Jewish history.
Michael Oren, Deputy Prime Minister to Benjamin Netanyahu, was an immigrant from the U.S. himself almost 40 years ago. He says most Americans come for different reasons than the French immigrants who came last month from a place where anti-Semitism is rampant.
This is a very different Aliyah. The people who came from North America are not coming because they're not fleeing anti-Semitism. They are not here because of economic strife. Right? They've made a decision to move from probably a better economy than our economy to certainly maybe a more secure environment than our environment, to serve in an army. In the United States, they don't have to serve in the army. Here, they do have to serve in the army. It's a very profound, weighty decision when you think about it.
Zelda Wildman from Ohio came holding a card from her father. It was issued by the British Mandate government in Palestine, denying him the right to come to Israel before it became a modern nation.
I feel like I'm fulfilling his dream. We lost all our family in the Holocaust, and he came to Ohio because that's where he was sent. He always wanted to go to Palestine.
Jeff DeHaan brought his family from Connecticut. His wife Dorit took care of the kids for months while Jeff took up a new job in Israel.
It was difficult to be separated. It was difficult for the kids. But we made it.
Their son Tal summed it up for the family.
It's just been really hard and stressful for when we had to get everything set up. But now once we're here, it's a lot easier and it's very worth it because this has been a dream for us and we are living the dream.
We asked Yaakov Khan if he is fulfilling the words spoken by the Bible prophets.
I think it's pretty obvious that we are because we're returning.
John Woggy, CBN News, Ben Gurion Airport, Tel Aviv.
We'll have more on what it's like for new immigrants to settle in Israel and some of the challenges they face when they arrive later in our show. As anti-Semitism continues to rear its head in Europe, the widow of one Israeli athlete murdered by Palestinian terrorists wants the leader of Britain's Labour Party to apologize. He laid a wreath at the grave of her husband's killers. John Woggy has that story.
It was an attack that stunned the world. Palestinian terrorists stormed the living quarters of the Israeli team at the 1972 Munich Olympics. In the end, a group calling itself Black September had murdered 11 Israeli athletes and coaches, including Anke Spitzer's husband, Andre. Fast forward to a 2014 photo of British Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn in Tunisia. He's standing at the graves of those terrorists with a wreath in his hands.
Imagine when an Israeli politician would go and put flowers on the graves of those murderers that killed people in London or in England in a terror attack. How would the British people accept that? They would not accept that.
Labeled by many for a long time as an anti-Semite, Corbyn admitted he was at the gravesite.
I was there when the wreaths were laid. That's pretty obvious. There were many others there who were witness to that. I witnessed many other people laying many wreaths.
Did you lay the wreath?
I laid one wreath along with many other people in memory, as I've said, of all those who died.
The photo drew widespread criticism in both the UK and Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu blasted Corbyn. The laying of a wreath by Jeremy Corbyn on the graves of the terrorist who perpetrated the Munich massacre and his comparison of Israel to the Nazis deserves unequivocal condemnation from everyone, left, right, and everything in between. Corbyn fired back in a tweet. Netanyahu's claims about my actions and words are false. What deserves unequivocal condemnation is the killing of over 160 Palestinian protesters in Gaza by Israeli forces since March, including dozens of children. The 1972 Munich Olympics were the first time the Games were held in Germany since they were hosted by Adolf Hitler in 1936.
Israel, which was founded in 1948 as among many things as an attempt for Jews to be able to defend themselves, was once again powerless while Jews were being killed in Germany. The historic resonance of that is clear.
Spitzer said the apology she wants isn't just for her.
He said, I wanted to honor the victims of terror. Where were you? Did you ever come to the graves of my husband or to other terror victims here? We never saw you, Mr. Corbyn.
John Waggy, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Israel has opened the main crossing point for goods going into Gaza. The Kerem Shalom crossing had been closed for a month because of Hamas attacks on Israel. Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman told Gaza residents on Facebook that calm pays, violence doesn't. A week of relative quiet at the Gaza border followed Hamas' explosion of rocket fire and flaming balloons and demonstrations. Israel also extended Gaza's fishing area to 9 nautical miles in the Mediterranean. It's the same border Israel had allowed before the violence. Egypt and the UN have pushed hard for a long-term ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, but Israeli Deputy Minister Michael Oren told CBN News he's skeptical.
I can't tell you much about the possibility of a ceasefire, but one thing I can tell you with 100% certainty that if a ceasefire is achieved, Hamas will violate it, because that's the nature of Hamas. Hamas is a jihadist terrorist organization that's sworn to kill us, so it's in its DNA to break that ceasefire.
Turning from Gaza to Turkey, where there was another setback for American pastor Andrew Brunson, detained in Turkey. A Turkish court rejected an appeal for his release. The pastor is at the center of an escalating spat between the U.S. and Turkey. Turkey's currency and economy have plunged, and Turkey is blaming the United States. As relations worsen, some experts are worried that the U.S. will lose Turkey as an ally, while others say they already have. Dale Hurd has that story.
With Turkey's currency crashing, the government's response has been to blame outsiders and double down on bad economic policy that's only making it worse.
The Turkish lira had lost almost half its value against the dollar this year before recovering slightly overnight, and there are already signs that it's dragging down markets in Asia. The crisis accelerated last Friday after President Trump promised to double tariffs on Turkish exports because of Turkey's continued detention of American pastor Andrew Brunson. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said his nation is under siege. Today he announced a boycott of U.S. electronics. Turks who have seen their buying power cut in half are worried. This man says, "For real, right now we think about the U.S. dollar when we go to sleep and when we get up." Making matters worse, President Erdogan has ruled out the possibility of higher interest rates, which is exactly what many economists say is needed.
So structural problems plus problems with U.S. all came together and created a perfect storm.
Erdogan now wants to arrest so-called economic terrorists on social media. That's anyone who says negative things about the economy. Some say Turkey is already a de facto dictatorship, and by virtue of its location, sitting between the Middle East and Europe, it's one of the most strategically important nations in the world. There's concern it may turn its back on the U.S. and NATO and become an ally of Russia or China. Foreign policy analyst Dr. Christopher Hull believes it's already happened.
Erdogan himself is proving that he's hostile to America, he's hostile to the West, he's hostile to our values. He is much too closely aligned with the global jihad movement. He's creating an Islamic state.
And no matter what happens to the economy, Turkish journalist Abdullah Bozkurt says Erdogan will never leave office because he would lose immunity to prosecution into corruption scandals.
He is afraid of those, investigation be opened against him. So he'll be looking at huge legal troubles.
So Turkish citizens are in for a rough ride as a combative Erdogan clings to power, takes swings at the United States, and the Turkish currency continues to get battered. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Up next, the church in the Middle East, persecuted but standing strong. In recent years, the church in the Middle East has gone through dark days, but some are convinced the lives of believers today are reflecting those of the heroes and heroines of the faith in the region where Christianity was born.
Across the Middle East, Christians and the church have suffered terrible persecution, yet there is still optimism here.
I see the church is standing and standing strong with all of the difficulties and with all of the atrocities and all the persecution.
Egyptian-born Yvette Isaac believes that's because they're continuing the testimony of the early believers.
I really believe every day a new page of the book of Acts is being written.
And Isaac wants the church in the West to know what's happening here.
There are brothers and sisters, Christian brothers and sisters who are living there. And if it wasn't for them, first, we will not hear about Christianity in the West. Because of the church in the Middle East, Christianity spread all over the world.
Yet she says the pressure on Christians has been enormous.
That's where it's all started. And the enemy's focus is to destroy it. The enemy's focus is to empty the Middle East from Christianity. So he's putting all of this pressure. And we have seen all kinds of pressure under the people.
Isaac hosts a television program to the Middle East, and she believes Christian media can play a big role to help Christians.
The church needs to know the truth. The Christian media needs to air and to show the world the stories from there. If we just depend on the secular media, we will get what's their agenda for the world to hear. But awareness is very important. That's why we have many clips of Christian people that they suffer and they tell their stories.
One of the stories she tells are the Christians who suffered under ISIS.
We go to Iraq and to Syria, and we go to these places, and we try to empower the girls that they came out of captivity. Christians in Syria and in Iraq, they don't want to speak too much. Probably it's a fear, but when we go there, they open up, and they feel like they can open up and tell us their stories. So we share their stories after their permission to the world.
She tells one story of an Orthodox priest and an evangelical pastor.
An Orthodox priest told me, when there was no water and there are only few drops of water left, I would rather divide it with the evangelical pastor, because I know if we both live, we're going to be more powerful together. If I live and he dies, I'm weaker.
She hopes each part of the body of Christ will do their part.
What am I called to do? Especially in the Western world. The Western church needs to understand the importance of the existing of Christians in the Middle East at this time.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Coming up, a deeper look at what it's like to make Aliyah. Before the modern state of Israel was reestablished, the Jewish people began to return to their ancient homeland as the prophets had foretold. And as we've seen, they keep coming. CBN's Scott Ross met some of those new immigrants at their first home in Israel and talked with them about why they came.
They come from all over the world to a place many have never been. Yet the Jewish people have longed to return to this land for thousands of years.
I'm Sarah from France.
Hi, I'm Dylan from Uruguay. I did Aliyah in December. I'm here because I love Israel. Hi, my name is Debbie. I'm from Córdoba, Argentina.
I'm Nikita from Russia.
Hi, my name is Gadi. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and I made Aliyah in December. I'm a lawyer in New York, and I'm here because it's the only Jewish state there is.
It's called Aliyah, literally going up. Taken from biblical times, the term describes when people went up to Jerusalem to worship at the temple. Now it means immigrating or returning to Israel.
You're an American.
Yep.
Why did you come?
It's a beautiful country. I love it here.
Yeah, Arizona's beautiful.
Arizona is beautiful, but it's not Israel.
Last year, 27,000 new immigrants arrived in Israel, including 3,600 from the United States.
For almost 3,000 years, we were disconnected, but we were praying for Jerusalem. So it's really a gathering of exiles, and it continues every day.
I spoke with Natan Sharansky, leader of the Jewish agency, which oversees bringing the Jewish people home.
I am very proud to be the head of the organization now, which brought 3.5 million Jews from the creation of the State of Israel.
Sharansky made headlines in the 80s as a political prisoner in the former Soviet Union. International pressure led to his release, and he immigrated to Israel in 1986.
I meet with a lot of new immigrants, and I love to be in the airport and to see this moment of them going down from the airplane, because you think that after each of these people, there are at least 50 generations of Jews who are praying and dreaming about coming to Jerusalem. And each of them is closing a huge circle of 1,000 years of exile.
Biblical prophets Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel all spoke of a time when God would bring the Jewish people back to the land of Israel. The prophet Amos says they'll never be dispersed again. Although they're part of a prophetic and exciting journey, immigrants face a whole new world when they arrive.
Some of the people left everything. Left the friends, left families, left the smell, the food, the jobs, all the things that they knew, they're coming here and they start a new life.
That's why the state works to create a smooth transition. Ziva Avrahami leads Beit Canada, Ulpan Etzion, an absorption center in Jerusalem. New immigrants live here free for 5 months so they can focus on learning Hebrew and living in Israel.
We called him the first home in the homeland. They're coming here and they have like a soft landing. They don't need to be afraid from things. We help them to be part of Israel, but step by step.
How important is it that they learn Hebrew?
The main reason that the people are here in this absorption center is to get to know the language. The Hebrew is the key to the Israeli society. If you want to be part of Israel, if you want to be the leader of this beautiful country, you need to know the language.
Ulpan Etzion is mainly for millennials who have a university degree. You could say it's like a prophetic melting pot.
Are there conflicts between them, culturally, socially, adapting and adjusting to one another?
Yes. They're different people for different places. The culture is different. The language is different. So to put together 250 young adults in one place, you can imagine what's going here in the evenings. A lot of people are becoming friends for life.
Do the majority of them then stay in Israel?
The first year and the second year are the hardest one. And if you survive the 2 years, people are staying in Israel. This is going to be their home.
I spoke with some of the students about their experiences.
I think it's the land of the Jewish people, and that is why I'm here. I want to essentially come home and to be with my fellow Jews and to please God find a Jewish husband.
Why did you come?
Well, I came to Israel because I feel this is the homeland of the Jewish people, and for the first time in 2,000 years we have our own homeland and we can build a prosperous Jewish state, and I think that's very exciting to be a part of.
What kind of work would you like to get into?
I studied accounting and finance, so hopefully something in that area.
Do you want to get married?
Yeah, for sure. That's why I'm here in Israel. There's plenty of beautiful Jewish girls, and let's hope I can find one of them.
As Sharansky prepares to leave his role, I asked if he thought all the Jewish people need to come home.
Our prophets speak about it very clearly, about this grand design of ingathering of the people of Israel in the land of Israel. And I want to help the people to make this decision not by giving orders, not by pushing them, even not by shaming them, but simply by giving them the feeling how good it is.
Scott Ross for CBN in Jerusalem.
Still ahead, Hatikva and Aliyah. When a Jewish person decides to make Israel home, he or she has fulfilled the hope of generations to return to the land. That's the theme of Israel's national anthem. We'd like to leave you today with another look at what it's like when new immigrants first arrive. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And remember, the God that's watching over Israel and fulfilling His word from thousands of years ago is watching over you and me. I'm Julie Stahl. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.